Greetings and welcome to the inaugural WCASA podcast series, episode 1, Social Media and Facebook. I'm Stephen Montagna. I'm the Violence Prevention Communications Coordinator for the Wisconsin Coalition Against Sexual Assault. We wanted to do a short podcast series, and I thought I would start by looking at social media because we've had a number of questions about it lately, and not a lot of our members are really using it, and perhaps they should be. So we're going to take a look at social media. What are we talking about when we say social media? It really refers to what we sometimes call the Web 2.0, effectively the second generation of the World Wide Web. Now, the first generation of the World Wide Web was built to be interactive, but a lot of people didn't use it that way. They just used it like a billboard. You put information up there and people came by and they would see it and act on it or not. Web 2.0 turns things around a little bit and moves it from a billboard model to a much more interactive model. So this is where we see things like internet forums or internet bulletin boards popping up, web blogs or blogs, microblogging, which is something that refers to services like Twitter or Posterous or Tumblr. Wikis, most of us have become familiar with Wikipedia because it's become so popular. And of course, podcasts, like the very podcast that you're watching and listening to right now. So why would we want to use any of these things? Well, in some ways, they're just another tool for communicating with our communities. Of course, they could be fun because, as I mentioned, it's a two-way street. This can encourage, under the best circumstances, the community to become part of the conversation. And also, these are ubiquitous. Even if you yourself don't use social media on a regular basis, there's a generation that's coming up right now that has never known a world in which they weren't connected 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in which information wasn't readily available, and in which that information, with a click of a button, could be shared, promoted, liked, if you will. So it's just part of the lexicon. It's becoming part of the way in which we interact with data, with information. So as an agency, you'll want to be, on top of it a little bit. You have to think of it as part of your public relations picture. Some of your customers, if you will, clients, your community members, are going to be using this. And so if you want to get information out to them, whether it's information about your services, information about the prevalence of sexual violence, or information about trying to shift the cultural attitudes and prevent sexual violence, you have to recognize social media as one of the pathways in which that is possible to communicate. So think of it as partially public relations, partially customer service. Again, a very collaborative tool, possibility for networking and finding other agencies or other people working on similar issues. And again, customer or client acquisition. Now, you wouldn't necessarily want social media to be the forum where, for instance, a survivor would get primary support, but it may be the entree point. It may be the point of first contact, which allows them to connect with you or your agency and then get into the services, the support that they really need. So how does one do this? Well, the good news is that if you're watching this video, you're already doing it. You're either watching it on YouTube or on the WCASA website. You're watching video that you're streaming from a web server. If you look down and you're on YouTube and you look down, you'll see a little place for comments, a place to like or promote this on various social services. So you're already part of the social media blogosphere. We're going to look at a number of different ways you can do this. We'll sort of focus on the big ones: Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Flickr, LinkedIn. These are some of the more popular approaches. In this particular podcast, we're going to focus on Facebook, and in a future podcast, we'll look at Twitter and then at the other services in podcasts beyond that. So we have to say a word, of course, about safety. Buyer beware, but in our parlance, it's safety. Of course, you always have to be careful and take into account personal safety when doing anything on the World Wide Web, especially when doing anything related to social media. Now, this is true of everyone, but there is an extra added layer of caution for us and our clientele, given that we work in a field which deals with primary victims of both sexual assault and, for many of them, domestic violence as well. And we know that, unfortunately, technology has become yet another way for those who want to cause harm to people to be able to do that. And unfortunately, the very power of social media and the ubiquity of all of these different devices, of having access to all this data, that can make it fun to communicate with friends. It can make it incredibly easy for a perpetrator to get information about you and escalate their perpetration, whether it's stalking, threats, and or having access to you to hurt you or to perpetrate a sexual assault. So we do want to be cautious. We also want to stay away from victim-blaming attitude. One has to be sort of an informed consumer. It's difficult to sort of get a clear picture of this because all of these different services have different privacy settings. Your best bet is to take some time to examine those. But the bottom line, and maybe the best ground rule I can offer, is you or any of your clientele or any people in your community who you talk about social media with, the basic understanding is anything you put up online, accept the possibility that at some point it will be public information. If you use that guideline and therefore just never publish anything incredibly personal, that's going to be your best safety net. Now, in some of these services, there are ways to say, well, I want to say this and I want this message to only go to my close friends, not to go to the public, versus I want this to be available to the public. That's true, but again, it gets tricky. Sometimes you can share something with a friend, and if their if their privacy settings are set a certain way, your comment may end up getting broadcast to their group of friends, who could include someone who is a former boyfriend, girlfriend, someone who has been or might be a potential perpetrator. These are things we have to keep in mind. That being said, let's take a look at Facebook. And this is a static image of WCASA's Facebook picture, a page. And so let's just go ahead and we're going to pop out to the live World Wide Web and go to Facebook right up here. Facebook, and it's actually just Facebook with WCASA added. And this will load. Now, you'll see that I'm actually logged into Facebook as me. So I have an individual account, but even as that individual user, I am an admin on this page. And you also notice there are a couple other staff people that are admins on our page. And you can, of course, control this. So whoever creates the page would sort of be the first master admin, and that person could allow other staff people to have administrative access. And what does that administrative access mean? Well, that really depends on how you've set up your page. A Facebook page mainly consists of what's called the wall. And the wall is where you post whatever you want to post. This is an example of an image or a link to a story or some other agency's information. Here's a link to an MSNBC article on sexual abuse in the Milwaukee Archdiocese. So you can post this and people can see it, and then if you've allowed comments, other people who are fans of your page or who visit your page can come along and add comments. The other thing they can do is, of course, they can like your page. And the nice thing about this is that you can keep a running tally of how many people like your agency page, and you start to get a sense of, what the activity is. Here's a stat that shows people talking about this. And you can pull up some statistical information about the traffic to your Facebook page. This is just a list of visitors who've liked WCASA. Because I'm an admin and I'm logged in as admin, I can also view insights, which will give us some information about the traffic and visitors on the page over a period of time. You can track new likes, etc. And it's taking a while for the web to load this graph, but you do get this nice graph where you can literally see the activity, activity over a course of time. So that's handy. Let's go back to the WCASA page. The other thing is that I mentioned this is the wall. You also, of course, have a general info page, and on that general info page is a place to put information about your agency. Now you'll see here I've put a web address, and the page has automatically pulled in and plotted a Google map of our location. Actually, Microsoft, I think it's Bing that it's using. This, of course, is a setting you can turn off, and certainly for many of our members, some of whom are dual SASPs and have shelters and therefore have some additional privacy considerations. This is something that you needn't show. You can control this if you go out to, as admin, go out to the administrative page. You click here and you'll see that we get a bunch of information. There are our admins, and then, we can have some control over settings. And if I go into manage settings here, this is where we can control things like posting preferences, email notifications. I think I should point out, since we're here at manage permissions, that you can actually age restrict your content. So again, since we do deal with sex and sexuality and some sensitive topics, there may be, something, you want to put a limit on who can visit your page. The other thing where I wanted to show you is basic information. And this, I believe, it'll come up in a moment, is where the address information is. And this is where you can actually select if you want to show a map or not. And this information is I'm almost sure, optional. In fact, it absolutely is no physical street address. So that's just a window into some of the settings. And then the other thing you'll possibly want to do as an agency, I'll just come down, is promote other pages and network with other people. So you'll see that here are some other agencies, and so if you visit another agency, so WCASA, I know is our sort of sister agency, is on here. In fact, here's an event listing for the Teen Summit coming up, which is another thing you can do. You can put up a page just for an event. I must have already liked this, because usually there would be a like button somewhere in here, and you could click like, and that would add it to sort of the list of likes on your page. So it's about connecting with people, having a little bit of a storefront, if you will, out there in the World Wide Web. Now, many of us or many of your agencies might already have web pages. That's okay. This can be a good conduit for your web page. You can post stuff here that regular Facebook users will find, and they may not automatically go to your website. But if you post a link to something on your website, it's a way of driving some more traffic there. I'll just show an example real quick of this. Somewhere in here where if I had posted something, so when the media coverage was happening around saves, I posted stuff to our news page, and then I just linked it here so people could find it. And you can see that there were 3 people who shared this, which is not a high number, but it's great. It means people are connecting. It means the information's getting out there. So this was just a real quick overview of social media, and a real quick primer on Facebook. You, of course, find more information if you go to our webpage. There is the media page, and that will bring up some sub-pages, which one of them is a social media page, which has some information, some links to information, some other resources you might find handy. And of course, you're always welcome to contact me and or WCASA for more technical assistance, more follow-up. So thanks for watching and listening, and look forward to seeing you out there on the World Wide Web. Take care.